In a quiet valley surrounded by towering mountains and lush meadows, there sat a small village that looked almost like a painting. It was a place where the morning fog danced over the green fields, where wooden chimneys released the sweet smell of burning firewood, and where children ran barefoot through the grass in summer. Birds chirped on rooftops, cows grazed lazily across hillsides, and laughter often floated across the cobblestone lanes. In one weathered little cottage near the end of Ashwood Lane lived a boy named Thomas Thompson. He was 10 years old, full of bright eyes and warm laughter. Everyone said his smile had magic. It made the saddest hearts feel a little lighter, but behind that smile lived worry. A kind of worry a boy should not have to carry. Thomas lived with his parents. His father, Mr. Thompson, worked long hours as a car painter in a nearby town. Every morning before sunrise, he packed his worn lunch box, kissed his son's forehead, and trudged out into the cold. His hands were rough, marked with paint stains that never seemed to wash off, no matter how hard he scrubbed. His mother, Mrs. Thompson, stitched clothes at home. The little sewing machine near the window hummed from dawn to dusk. She patched torn jackets, adjusted wedding dresses, and mended worn socks. Her fingers were skilled, but the income was small. She often smiled at Thomas, but her eyes sometimes showed shadows of fear of unpaid bills, empty cupboards, and a future that always felt uncertain. Every morning, Thomas woke up to the whispering of his parents in the kitchen. They tried to keep their voices low, but worry has a way of making itself heard. "We can't keep skipping payments. Rent is overdue again. The landlord won't wait much longer. And the electricity bill too." Their words floated through the cracks of their struggle, landing heavily on Thomas' heart. Though he said nothing, he knew they didn't want him to worry. Thomas never asked for much. His clothes were old, his shoes had worn soles, and he carried a second-hand backpack to school. But he loved his family, and more than anything, he wanted to help them. One chilly morning on his way to school, Thomas noticed something that made his steps slow down. By the willow tree near the corner, a group of older boys were taunting a classmate, Peter. Peter was quiet, walked with a slight limp, and wore thick glasses he could barely afford. His shoes were too big, and his backpack was torn. The boys mimicked his limp, laughing cruelly while he stood there, shoulders drooping. Something stirred inside Thomas. He walked forward. He didn't shout, didn't threaten, didn't insult. He simply stood beside Peter. "Leave him alone," he said softly. The bullies huffed and backed away, not because they were scared, but because something about Thomas felt solid, almost unshakable. When the bullies left, Peter didn't speak right away. He wiped his glasses, but his hands shook. Thomas looked at him and gave that bright, easy smile. "Walk with me?" he asked. Peter nodded slowly. From that day, they walked to school together. At first, they walked in silence, but soon Peter began to open up. He spoke of how hard things were for him at home, how school felt like a battlefield, how he wished to learn, but struggled to see the board, how he felt different, how he felt alone. Thomas listened, really listened. For the first time, Peter felt seen. "You're not alone," Thomas said one morning as they walked. "Everyone has something they carry." Peter looked up, studying Thomas' face. He had always assumed Thomas had a perfect life. That smile fooled many. But one morning, as the sun painted gold across the valley, Thomas quietly shared a bit of his own story about the unpaid bills, his parents' tired eyes, the worry that always sat quietly in his heart. Peter didn't say anything at first. He just nodded, and in that moment, two boys became something more. They became a team. School was not easy for Thomas. His mind often wandered from math problems to thoughts of money, bills, and his parents' worried whispers. Math, especially, felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. One afternoon, after failing a math quiz, he stayed back after class. His teacher, Miss Adams, was writing on the board when she noticed him still sitting there, fiddling nervously with his pencil. "Is something wrong, Thomas?" He hesitated. "I don't understand it. I try, but it just doesn't make sense." Miss Adams smiled gently. "You don't have to figure everything out alone. Sit. Let's go through it slowly." She explained everything step by step, making numbers feel like a story rather than a battle. For the first time, math made sense. Every day after school, he stayed a bit longer. Not because he was slow, but because he was determined. "You're not bad at math," she told him. "You're just distracted by real-life problems. And real problems don't go away easily. But that doesn't mean you can't learn. It just means you're stronger than you know." Her words stuck with him like a light in the dark. Weeks passed, but at home, worries grew. One cold evening, as the wind rattled the window glass, Thomas overheard his parents talking. They thought he was asleep. "I don't know what else to do." His mother whispered, "The debt, it's too much now. We might have to leave this house." His father said quietly, "If we lose it, I don't know where we'll go." Thomas felt something inside him tighten. He wasn't just sad. He was angry at helplessness, angry at watching his parents fight against problems that felt too big. He remembered something his grandfather once told him: in every problem, there's a solution waiting to be found, but it doesn't always look like a solution at first. So, Thomas decided to look for that solution. He started working odd jobs. He mowed lawns, delivered groceries, washed dishes at the little diner near the square. He helped old Mrs. Harrison carry her bags, ran errands for Mr. Potter, and stacked books in the small village library. He didn't earn much, but every coin meant something. One day, while passing the town square, he saw a flyer. It was bright, colorful, and read, "Annual Village Talent Show, Grand Prize, $2,000 enough to save their home, enough to clear the bills." He ran home, breathless. "Mom, Dad, I'm going to enter the talent show." His parents exchanged worried looks. "Thomas, that's a lot of money. What if you don't win?" his mother said carefully. He stood tall, eyes determined. "I might not win, but I have to try." His father looked at him a long moment, then smiled slowly. "Then we'll help you practice." Every evening, after finishing homework and chores, Thomas practiced his guitar. His fingers often hurt, sometimes blistered, but he kept going. Music wasn't just notes anymore. It became his voice, his hope. He practiced everywhere: in the living room, in the garden, under the oak tree by the creek. Peter came too, cheering him on, clapping loudly even when the song wasn't perfect. "Sing it like your heart is speaking," Peter said one evening. Thomas nodded. He understood. The day of the talent show arrived. The village hall was packed. Lanterns glowed warmly, filling the room with soft light. Thomas stood backstage, knees shaking, guitar in hand. His mother squeezed his hand. His father fixed his collar. Peter patted his shoulder. "You've already won," Peter whispered. "And even if you don't," his father said softly, "we are proud." When his name was called, Thomas stepped onto the stage. The spotlight felt too bright. His heart raced too fast. Then he remembered why he was there. He started to play, slowly, softly, then stronger. His voice trembled at first, but then it steadied. He sang of hope, of struggle, of small houses and tired parents, of fear, friendship, courage, and dreams. He sang his story. And in that moment, everyone listened. No one clapped when he finished, not because they didn't like it, but because they were still holding their breath. Then came the applause. Loud, long, honest. He didn't win first place. He won something bigger. He won his village. In the days that followed, people from all across the valley came to help. They brought food, clothes, job offers for his father, sewing orders for his mom, and a donation box for the family. One evening, as snowflakes danced softly outside, the villagers gathered on their doorstep, led by Miss Adams, holding a small wooden box. "We heard the song," she said, "and we heard the message. No one in this village struggles alone." Inside the box was enough. More than enough. His parents cried, not the sad kind, the relieved kind. That night, Thomas felt something change, not outside, not in the house. Inside his heart. He had not solved all his problems, but he had learned something more important. Problems become smaller when shared. He kept walking with Peter to school. He kept helping his parents. He kept practicing guitar. He kept smiling this time, not to hide his worries, but because he believed something deeply. You don't need to be perfect to help. You just need to care. Seasons passed. New challenges came. But the Thompsons faced them with courage, community, and hope. And wherever Thomas went, people remembered his song, not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Life slowly began to change for the Thompsons. Not suddenly, not magically, but gently. Ms. Thompson began receiving more sewing orders. People no longer saw her work as just stitching old clothes. They saw it as art. Her patterns became popular, and soon neighbors, and even the next town, began asking for her designs. Ms. Thompson's work as a car painter also improved. He was noticed for his dedication, and his boss promoted him to supervise a small team. He still came home tired, but now his exhaustion came with pride, not fear. And Thomas? He didn't stop playing his guitar, but now he didn't play to escape problems. He played because he believed music could connect people. He played at school events, in the town square, at village festivals, and sometimes at the little park where old Mr. Harrison fed the birds every morning. People didn't just hear the music. They felt it. But Thomas didn't want to be known just as the boy who sang. He wanted to be the boy who helped others, just like he helped Peter. So he started something special. Every Saturday, under the shade of the big oak tree behind the school, he gathered kids from his village, kids who felt alone, different, or unsure of themselves. There was Sarah, who loved art but was too shy to show her drawings. There was Marco, who stuttered and hated speaking in front of others. There was Lily, who loved to read but had no books at home. And Peter, always with a notebook, writing little stories about courage. Thomas brought his guitar, but he didn't perform. He encouraged them to share what made them special. One Saturday, he spoke to them softly. Everyone has something beautiful inside them, he said. We just have to help each other see it. They called it the Circle of Light. No membership, no rules, no judging. Just kindness, encouragement, and a belief that no one should struggle alone. Some weeks later, Miss Adams visited the Circle of Light. She watched quietly, then said, "Thomas, this is more than just children talking. This is a family." Word spread. Soon, more children joined. Even parents started attending. One evening, Peter stood up and read a small story he had written. It was about a little lantern that felt too small to light anything. But when it stood among other lanterns, together they lit an entire village. When he finished, there was silence, not because they didn't like it, but because they felt it. Miss Adams looked at Peter. "You're not just telling stories," she said. "You're reminding people what hope looks like." Peter smiled, and for the first time, he believed it. Seasons changed. Winter crept in, covering rooftops in white. The mornings turned crisp, and children wrapped themselves in thick scarves. One freezing evening, Mrs. Harrison, the elderly woman who always wore lavender perfume and fed sparrows by the fountain, fell ill. Many people didn't know her well, but Thomas did. She had once told him stories about her youth, about courage in the war, and about how kindness could change a life. When people heard she was unwell, many worried. She had no children nearby, no close family to visit her, but she had a village. And this village had learned something from a small boy with a guitar. So they helped. Mrs. Thompson sewed her warm blankets. Ms. Thompson repaired her broken porch light. Peter wrote her stories to keep her company. Sarah drew pictures of the birds Mrs. Harrison loved. And every evening, as the sun dipped low, Thomas sat by her window and played his guitar gently, so she could hear it through the glass. One day, as Thomas was leaving, she called him close. "You think you're helping me," she whispered, voice soft but strong. "But my boy, you're actually teaching them how to care for each other." Thomas felt something warm bloom in his heart. Not pride, something deeper. Purpose. Spring arrived. Flowers stitched colors across the fields. The village looked alive again. One afternoon, at the school assembly, the mayor stood on stage. "We are starting something new," he said. "A small school music and arts program for children who cannot afford lessons, and we would like Thomas Thompson to be its first mentor." There was applause, but Thomas didn't hear much of it. He was looking at his parents. His mother's eyes were shining. His father stood straighter than he had in months. He walked onto the stage, heart full. He didn't talk about winning. He didn't talk about money. He didn't talk about talent. He spoke about kindness. Sometimes people say the world changes through big inventions, big speeches, big victories. He said calmly, but I think the world changes through small acts of care, one hand reaching out to another. You could hear the silence, the good kind, the kind that listens. Months became years. Thomas grew taller, older, wiser. He no longer needed to work odd jobs to help his family. They had found their balance. But even as life improved, he never forgot what it felt like to worry, to struggle, to want to help. Even when he didn't know how. So he kept doing what he always did. He listened. He encouraged. He played his guitar. The circle of light grew. It became a youth program, then a village tradition. But someday, it would become more. One summer evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Thomas sat on the old wooden bench outside his house with his guitar. Peter sat beside him, now a confident storyteller, holding a notebook full of dreams. You ever wonder, Peter asked, how one moment, one choice, can change so many lives? Thomas looked at him. When you stood next to me by the willow tree, Peter continued, you didn't just help me. You helped everyone who came after. Thomas didn't answer right away. He looked toward the mountains, toward the meadows, toward a village that had learned how to shine. After a while, he smiled gently. Maybe one person can't solve every problem, he said, but one person can show others how to help, and that was more than enough.